Hello, welcome everyone to our video chat today. Thanks for joining us. Lumi, you want to kick it off for everybody?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much for logging in. We see the numbers going up. We have about 400 registrations today. So thank you for making time. I am Lumi Hilci, German Convention Bureau in New York City. We wanted to create this platform because we wanted to hear from industry leaders about how what they have learned and how they have shifted their tactics during COVID-19 in the meetings, hospitality, and tourism space. This will be a friendly, genuine, organic conversation, and we also invite you to participate by sending in any questions, comments in the comment box. We did want to specify who you are from everywhere in our industry, planners, hotels, DMCs, CVBs representing different cities and countries, event agencies, corporations, associations, professional speakers, trade show organizers, students, communication specialists. All of you are signing up, and really this only shows that we are truly a tight community. Thank you also to our panel here today. In no particular order, an amazing group of professionals who have a lot to share. Jessica Pagonis, Director of Meeting Operations from the Optical Society, live from Washington, DC. Michael Nelson, Managing Partner, Origin Event Planning, live from Las Vegas. Victoria Lee, Global Meetings and Travel Director, Estee Lauder, live from New York City. Richie Karaburun, aka Professor K, Clinical Assistant Professor at NYU, School of Professional Studies, New York City. Diane Pantaleri Otto, Director of International Sales, the Estrel Berlin in Berlin. And Katharina Bitterle, Convention Marketing from the Stuttgart Convention Bureau, live from Stuttgart. Our lovely chat will be moderated by Tyler Davidson, Vice President and Chief Content Editor for Meetings Today. And last but not least, this wouldn't have been possible without the help and coordination of, Cassandra Small and Jackie Jordan from Quinn PR, public relations agency specializing in international travel and hospitality. So without further ado, we have a lot to cover, really interesting information. So Tyler, would you like to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Lumi, and welcome everyone to today's presentation. I guess we're looking kind of live at the new normal, at least for the short term. I almost call it the kind of the Brady Bunch setup here, where everyone is using Zoom. Everyone's becoming more familiar with Zoom to meet in a virtual environment because we just can't meet face to face right now. But I think everyone will join me in looking forward to the day when we can meet face to face again. But I know in the meantime, a lot of us are working out of our homes. A lot of us are meeting via Zoom and other platforms for our company events. And I just thought I'd start off today with throwing it out to everyone there. And maybe we'll start off with Diane. Indeed, I guess this is the new normal. And not even externally, but internally. How do you think this will impact business in the long term, and how is you and your organization dealing with this right now?
Well, Tyler, thank you very much for talking about the Brady Bunch, because I always very much appreciate a 1970s television lead-in. And actually that reminds me of another popular cartoon at that time. Perhaps some of the listeners and viewers may remember the Jetsons, and how back in the 70s, we all sat in front of our TVs watching the Jetsons, and they had what is the equivalent of video conferencing today. And I know as a little girl, perhaps 9 years old, looking at that, I thought, gosh, this will never be possible. And here we are today. So considering that, I think it's quite amazing, the ingenuity and creativity of humankind. The mid-70s was not that long ago, and the technological innovations that have occurred since that time. Sometimes that's even overwhelming. But if we look at it in the positive light, we're all severely impacted by this coronavirus and what it's doing to our industry. But thankfully, we have this tremendous innovation to fall back on that's making this situation a lot more bearable and enabling us to move forward in a different way. And I also like to hark back to your comment saying this is the new normal. That's true, but I would like to say it's the new temporary normal, and we will return back to the way in which we did business before, but perhaps in a different form and hopefully wiser if we're smart and we take this moment where we've hit the pause button to reflect upon how it is best for us to move forward.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you, Diane. And I was also going to say, it's kind of like the Dick Tracy watch too, when we were all promised the video conference. I bet Apple has that already. I don't have an Apple Watch, and so maybe I'm missing something there. But Jessica, you're with the Optical Society. How has this affected you? Has it stalled research in your segment? And how are your members dealing with this situation right now?
Oh, that's, Diane bringing up the Jetsons, and it's actually really funny because even though the optics community is really wide, we have a section or a sector in optics that's directly with fiber optics communications. And that industry is what enabled this virtual world that we're in right now. So for that sector of the community, they're extremely busy. They've got, they're part of the essential businesses that are supporting and enabling the telecommunications infrastructure. So they are definitely all hands on deck there. But you're right, for the rest of the community, the other companies and corporations, and even on our academia side, research and universities are closed. And so research is stalled or just stopped all in general. So it's definitely affected all of us across the board.
Yeah, and I know just knowing the association segment is so much reliant on usually annual meetings for to make their revenue. What are you hearing from your colleagues out there in the association segment?
Well, they're all trying to figure out this new normal that we're in, just trying to see if virtual conferences is the way to go or if we need to postpone and cancel. We're hearing it all from our own members. We're trying to decide what we're going to do with our upcoming events. There's definitely a component of members that want to go virtual, but then there's the group of people that are just adamant that face-to-face value is what's most important. So I think we're just trying to juggle what's the right decisions for each association and each event.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Let's, Diane, did you have something to jump in with, or?
Jessica, I think you really hit upon a very, very pertinent and relevant point about whether or not it's suitable for a meeting to take a virtual format or a face-to-face format. And I think that's a question that a lot of us are facing at the moment. Of course, for the time being, for the next several months, looks like virtual will be the only alternative. But and it's a good one. It does work. It does meet our needs. But I would like to just take a moment to highlight. I think we all know somehow that the face-to-face meeting is really unbeatable. And I think there are many reasons for this, but I'd just like to take a moment to highlight two of them. Foremost among them really has to do with the notion of creativity and interaction. If we were to ask some of the greatest thinkers of our time, whether it be Charles Darwin or Freud or even David Byrne from the Talking Heads, some of their most creative moments of creativity occurred through what I would call random interaction with something that was unpredicted. The online platform is it gives us our pre-regulated feed. Whereas if you attend a global conference face-to-face, you may have many unanticipated conversations and interactions, and you may all of a sudden see, oh, well, that's something that I'm not really that interested, well, that has caught my attention, something that's outside of the box. In the tech sector, they refer to this as disruption. In order for humankind to continue with its high level of creativity, we need to be outside the box. And the online platform is very much in a box. Look at all of us at this moment. You know, a very a simple example of this, and then I'll stop to drive the point home. If you walk into a bookshop, or if you open up a paper newspaper, all of a sudden you'll be like, okay, well, I came in to look for a book about this particular topic, but then you might be in a completely different area and gain some inspiration or information that we put together in our minds in ways that perhaps only the human brain can do. And this is what the global conference enables. And so when we're coming to the discussion or the question, online format, yes, for the next several months, but then I think it's important for the future innovation of humankind that face-to-face meeting still occurs.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. And let's move around the virtual room here and ask folks how this has affected them personally and in their organizations. And maybe we'll start off with Victoria with Estee Lauder.
Yeah. So Estee Lauder, we've been heavily impacted because we are retail. So most of our retail partners, they're closed, meaning we've had to shift the focus of our sales to be omni-channel, online sales. Also, all of our meetings too, the majority of them are internal trainings and conferences and seminars, which we've taken the decision to eliminate through our fiscal year because given that we don't have sales, we want to be able to cut the T&E costs. With the growth of online sales and omni-channel, that also does change how our production facilities are able to support it. And then in light of everything that's been going on with coronavirus, Estee Lauder's also changed their production facilities in Long Island and in London to actually create hand sanitizer for the coronavirus reliefs. So at the moment, getting a lot of feedback about, oh, no one's traveling right now, you shouldn't be that busy at work. And actually it's been quite busy. Really, now this has opened up the conversation, changes perspective on who needs to travel, why do we need to travel, and we're evaluating what does business critical mean and aligning with our senior management about that definition so that we can prioritize the functions for business recovery. When we host meetings, that if they do have to be face-to-face, that they are for the business recovery. We're also heavily focused now on looking at technology where we can partner with finance and give oversight into spend. We had reporting before, but we realize now with coronavirus, it has to be more robust. It has to be on demand. We have to see who is booking, where they're going, not only from spend, but from a safety and security perspective. And then putting in place, looking at how do we control who's going to be traveling, because now there's restrictions on large gatherings. So making sure that people aren't preemptively booking things that can pose a risk because it's not in line with some of the new government regulations, as well as looking at resources to support virtual so that we can make sure it's, when we need to go virtual, it's conducive in lieu of face-to-face.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Victoria. I should probably just add right now, for those of you out there watching this, feel free to enter in any questions you have for the panelists in the chat area or in the Q&A area, and we'll get to those near the end of the program. So let's move over to Michael Nelson with Origin Event Planning in Las Vegas. Michael, Las Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world. It's amazing and disheartening to see all the images there of no one on the strip. I know I've been covering what's going on there, and I am hearing that a lot of people are postponing bookings maybe toward the end of the year, fall or first quarter of next year. What are you seeing there on the ground, and how has COVID-19 affected your business?
It's been really interesting. The first part of March, the city was running 95% occupancy. The conventions were going crazy. We personally just finished 4 events, upwards of a couple thousand people. And following our event was ConExpo ConAg, which was a large construction equipment show, which brought in over 200,000 people typically. That show was cut short by a day. And before you knew it, every location on the strip closed 3 days later. It's a literal ghost town here. This community is supported probably 50+% by the hospitality entertainment industry. So everyone's on hold. It has been nice to see that a lot of organizations were able to keep their employees paid through the 60-day window which we're on. We're shooting for hopefully a May 15th reopening, but I foresee it being a very soft opening. Not a lot of large gatherings. Most of the events that we've had and all of our clients and friends have said everything shuffled into fourth quarter, first quarter of next year. Some have just been taken virtual or canceled directly. So it's going to be a slow return for Las Vegas. As we all said, it may be a reset to rethink how the city has operated in the past and how we need to move forward as well.
Great, thank you, Michael. Let's move to Katarina from Stuttgart. Tell me, how are things in Germany right now? What experiences have you had? And I know following this, Germany has been really at the forefront of being responsible in this whole crisis. So I have to kind of tip my hat to them for that. But how has this affected, especially the convention segment there? And the Convention Bureau and DMO there, Katarina.
Thank you, Tyler. So just yesterday, our government announced that the restrictions to public life will be gradually eased. As the first step, smaller shops are allowed to open again, and school will be starting probably beginning of May again. But the social distancing rules still apply. This means that traveling is still prohibited, restaurants stay closed, and larger events will not take place until the end of August. What that means by numbers is yet to be defined by the government, but we already do see here that there is a really slow recovery rate to normal life, I'd say. And I would like to point out, because there was this question in the Q&A regarding the universities. No one does know just yet how universities will handle this, because like I pointed out, the first thing will be that the schools will be opening again for the classes that will have exams this year or next year. And then step by step, the government will look how the infection rate is affected by these lowered restrictions, and then we'll just go from there within, I guess, the next 14 days and so on and so on. So there is no real guidance here just now how the universities will be handling the situation. So what does this mean for us as a convention bureau? We were and still are the first point of contact on site in the destination. And our aim in this situation right now is to ensure that the planners have the most up-to-date information there is out there for their events taking place in Stuttgart. Meaning, for example, we give advice on postponing events or ensuring they find good dates to do so. But what I'd like to point out is that what this time really shows clearly, the great value of a strong community and the connections is just very important. For example, we are in vivid exchange with our venue partners and working together on finding solutions when the restrictions are reduced. For example, are our partners offering the possibilities to host hybrid events, offering one part of the solution to have a backup plan for future events to come. But what I'd like to point out, just to conclude, is that we are all in this together, and I really feel that we should work together to finding the solution. There is no winning one over another, and I feel that the solidarity within our industry is really huge, and I'm very thankful for that, because that's basically what our industry is about. It's about interacting and making an impact by sharing knowledge and ideas.
Great, thank you, Katarina. And I'm noticing that too. Following this, we are running sort of inspirational stories of people helping each other in the hospitality industry that maybe have been furloughed during this time. Organizations, setting up resources for people who may be out of work, and also just the industry coming together. So, I always like to look for maybe a silver lining to all this, and I think we'll all be closer once we come out of this. So thank you for that, Katarina. let's go over to Richie. What are you seeing at NYU? And I'm sure you're at the forefront of studying all this and discussing this with your students.
Thanks, Tyler. Yes, it's just, I think the new normal is going to be the overused word. We've actually started remote learning, remote teaching, and this is new to us, and this is new to our students. They didn't sign up for it. No one signed up for it. So we actually went through a lot of training. When Katerina says we're all in this together, yes, and I tell my students as well, look, we're all learning together. At the same time, and we are stronger together. And basically, we went through a lot of training. First of all, from Zoom to effectiveness of online teaching. How can you actually create, almost like replicate the classroom setting online? I myself learned a lot of things, and then one of my research is actually social connectedness. And a lot of constructs that are being transferred from offline, so-called real world, to online world. So as you said, there's silver lining for it. So first of all, our students are now well prepared for Zoom meetings, Zoom interviews, video conferences, because all of our classes have been actually online. And that being said, all of the summer classes, I teach on summer, and many of the faculty teach, we have classes on June and July. They are actually now will be online. So we are now, the discussion is what's going to happen with fall semester, which is actually starting beginning of September. Boston University just announced 2 days ago that they may basically delay the fall to January 2021. So that's obviously option for all the universities around the world, and it's typically in North America as well, or America. And we are now looking at the alternative situation. So a lot of contingency planning going on. So what happens if the social distancing actually, if the government says, schools can be closed, and what are we gonna do? Or school can be open, but following the social distancing, CDC's social distancing rule. So that actually applies to meeting planner as well. So what would be the new setting? And normally we in the classroom, if you have 30, 40 people, now you're only gonna have maybe 10. And how are you gonna deal with this? Space is gonna be an issue. So it just really the creativity, but we're all in academia looking at the teachable moments. And I basically tell my students that we're living the history, because nobody experienced in human history, nobody experienced such thing like this, and globally shut down. So what can we learn from this? So first, we can learn a lot from ourselves, and we can learn again. Now we're learning, I guess, sharing is caring, right? This basic that we learned in kindergarten. So we are looking at a lot of AC and BC scenarios, right? Before COVID and after COVID, or post-pandemic. So how that's going to happen. So one of the things that I wanted to share, I think the new normal is in the hospitality, there are many new things are gonna come. One of them is Emirates just announced yesterday that they are now testing every single passenger, very rapid testing. And are we going to be able to see that in the meeting planning as well? There will be winner out of this, some remote destinations, and I think it's they're going to be winners. So people are going to, once they travel, there was a question on the chat, when is the normalcy coming back? And I think that's a $1 million question. I said, I think when the vaccine is actually discovered and it becomes a mainstream. And I think that is when we're going to see normalcies for each industry. But we're learning from cross disciplines, right? Medical, psychology, finances, marketing. So we're working together. And I really think the domestic market will come first, as well as after that, the adventurous travelers and the luxury travel. And I think meetings, I've talked to a couple of hoteliers, they're just like it used to be green stamps certification or LEED certification, is that this cleanness certification will be something new for the industry as well from this? Or can the meeting planner, hey, all of our meeting rooms are disinfected, is clean? So I think we're gonna learn a lot, and we have to do this now while we are in this together. That's just really an important. DMOs are learning new things, how to actually work in this virtual environment and post-pandemic as well. So a good thing is, I think we're gonna come out of this with a lot richer and stronger, more intellectually, and that's gonna increase our creative thinking as well.
Yeah, I think that's the old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So
Love that
we're gonna,
song. And
we'll be flexing our muscles when this is done.
Exactly.
And I know I took part in GMID on Tuesday, the MPI section of that, and Stephen O'Malley from Merit said he predicted the first segments to come back will be medical meetings, healthcare, and financial services, and also, at least in the U.S., regional meetings and drive-to meetings. So I think, look for those perhaps to come back first. Let's get a hotel.
Tyler, let me actually, I forgot to give a little shout out, and I'm so proud of NYU students. While we were actually, I tell them they shouldn't say we are stuck at home. They should say we are safe at home. And because everything is taking place in their apartments right now. And we were discussing what else we can do for the industry, for the humanity. And we created, and thanks to some of my favorite students, all of the students, and especially Sarah, Maya, and Allison, they actually, we established a task force, and I think Jessica will be sending you guys the link, NYU mask making campaign, which we are actually doing, making the mask, and we will donate to homeless shelters in New York. We talk to them, they're in dire needs of the masks in New York City. So that's what we are doing it, and thank you for promoting this to the audience as well, which I think we all have to do something, whatever we can do while we are safe at home.
Wonderful, thank you, Richie. And let's move on over to Diane with the hotel segment perspective. I believe you represent as probably the largest hotel in Germany. How has the hotel segment been affected, and what are you seeing on the ground there?
Well, thank you, Tyler. I suppose I would like to expand on that a little bit. The Astral Berlin is, in fact, Germany's largest hotel. It's also a very large Congress center with 2 large convention halls for let's say 5,000 individuals. So our hotel business and Congress business is very interwoven and goes hand in hand. And as we've heard from many of the other panelists, as soon as this coronavirus really took full force, the event business really screeched to a halt. And as a result of that, there are no events taking place at the Astral Berlin at the moment. That has had a tremendous financial impact on the organization. And as a result, the hotel is in a very, very low level of operation with just a handful of guests for the moment. But what I'd also like to chime in here, and this also is something that will perhaps help us be wiser when we move forward. I remember when I was going through my sales and marketing training back in the 80s, someone mentioned to me during the training class, you can really tell the true colors of an organization or an institution when things go wrong. And I think we're seeing that globally. We're all kind of looking to see how other countries are managing the corona outbreak. And we're also looking to see how other employers are navigating, keeping their staff, or making sure that their staff is somehow looked after, and so on and so forth. So in this regard, I like to just put forward a very positive model, not only because it is the country of Germany where I reside as an expatriate American, and also my employer, because I feel that not only is the way in which they've chosen to go forward morally correct, I think it's a model that could be potentially copied in other parts of the world. So just a brief little rundown there. When you go from having huge congresses on a weekly basis to having no events whatsoever, you have a very huge staff, whether it's lighting technicians, setup people, the culinary team. All of a sudden, these people have nothing to do. And not only that, you have no money with which you can pay them. So very early on in this Corona experience, our management team or leadership team, along with our owner, we're a privately owned organization, they immediately stepped up to the plate and explained to all of us we were in different rooms because we couldn't all convene in the same room at that time already. And they explained that we would all be on different levels of reduced working hours, but at the same time, the German employment office would pay, let's say you went to 50% of your working hours, and the remaining 50% of your salary, for example, would be covered by the unemployment office up to 67%. If you were going on 100% reduction of your working hours, the employment office could potentially cover 60 to 67% of your salary, even though you're not working at all for a designated time period. And above and beyond that, the owner of the organization has put forward for families that are really having a hard time making ends meet with that 60 or 67% of their normal salary. The owner of the organization has offered 100,000 euro to the various different families to help them bridge the gap. And so I like to put this forward, not only because I felt so looked after by the organization, but also most importantly, that I think when we're all sitting in different parts of the world, we have our different government systems, we have our different employee systems. Our society is the sum of each individual and what we expect and demand of it. So we are at liberty at this time when we have hit the pause button to look around and look at other models and see what's working and what's not working, and perhaps turn to our own organizations, our own leadership, and say, maybe we need to come up with more sustainable models and models that are more supportive.
Great, thank you, Diane. Let's sort of transition to what you guys are seeing with your clients overseas, and maybe start with Michael. And we did have one question in chat. Of course, Michael, are you seeing a lot of events canceled or rescheduled, and maybe sort of go over that again? When are they rescheduling? And Las Vegas is an international destination with a lot of overseas travelers coming in, and overseas travel is probably the number one thing, really. It's been shut down in many cases. So, how has that affected you? How has it affected Las Vegas? And then maybe just move around the room and everyone can chime in.
Yeah, certainly. As mentioned before, most of the events have moved to fourth quarter and first quarter of next year. The challenge, I think, is you have 6 to 9 months worth of business that's all trying to shovel and reshuffle into a small section, which was already impacted because 2020 was going to be a banner year for most corporations and associations and pretty much the economies around the world, which meant 2021 was already full to begin with. And now that you're trying to relocate all these meetings from this year into next, we're running into huge space limitations. Even if we can find the space, the next question really becomes is the new normal of meetings. History, as we know it, is really out the window. Who's going to travel, who's needed to travel, what portion is going to be hybrid, who feels safe traveling. And then, of course, unfortunately, with the economic downturn, there's a lot of individuals and positions that may or may not still exist. So our corporations and associations we're dealing with are really trying to figure out what's the magic number? What do we need to do to move forward? So, it's going to be a challenge. We're all on a new learning curve. Everything is just basically starting from scratch again with many of our organizations we deal with. But internally, in regards to the travel, most everyone that I know of currently is sticking more regionally. And I think that's a trend you're going to see at least for the next 6 to 9 months once we even are able to travel. So full global international travel again for conferences, I wouldn't say will happen until maybe second quarter of next year, at least for Las Vegas on a big grand scale.
Thank you, Michael. Jessica, what are you seeing at the Optical Society?
Well, for international travel, for our meetings, right now, since everything's been put on hold, we're going virtual for everything through July. But for next year, we're going to run into the same issues where people are going to be concerned about traveling. There's going to be, I think it'll be a big mix. So you'll have individuals that are just ready to get out and want to be, you know, have that face-to-face. You'll have companies that are going to need to get their products out in front of people. But then you're also going to have the question that Victoria brought up is, you know, who is essential to travel? Like who's the most important to travel? Is it important to have, you know, 10, 20 exhibitors come to your, or to the conference, or can you get away with just sending, you know, 3 or 4? Then you're going to have the academic side where, because, you know, labs have been closed for so long, and now, you know, they go back to work, do they now have the time to go back and to travel again? So I think we're going to definitely see a mix. Our events are very global. We have about a 50% you know, division between domestic and international attendees. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this will turn around come 2021.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And Victoria, I know Jessica just sort of kind of paraphrased some of the things you said earlier. Do you have anything to add from the corporate meeting perspective?
Just to add, I think we'll have to consider when travelers will also feel safe going to international destinations, considering we're asking them to go onto longer haul flights. You're further away from your home. You're generally, when you're traveling internationally, you are home for a longer amount of time than if you were for these drive-by or regional meetings. Additionally, I would also add too that with international travel, what we've seen is the need to be having very transparent conversations with our hotels and suppliers about the force majeure, because we can sign a contract for the end of, let's say I want to sign a contract for December, because maybe there's a possibility we believe that the situation will lighten. But we don't want to run into issues with these suppliers where it's, oh, you know, the restriction has lifted in my country. However, in the US, it may be undetermined up until October. And realistically, for us to plan a successful meeting, we have to have the lead time. We have to book the air tickets. And if I'm calling this in October, I don't feel comfortable for a December meeting. We have to make sure that the suppliers are in mutual agreement with that type of partnership. So that's something I think the way that we approach contracting is also going to change.
Great, thank you, Victoria. And Katerina, what is the situation in Europe in regards to this? All the countries are so much closer together, and I'm sure there's a lot more travel between nations. What are you seeing there?
Well, right now the situation is that the borders are closed. There is no traveling between the different nations except people that work across the border. But apart from that, there is no traveling at all. And like I said earlier, it will last longer that traveling will be allowed again. So leisure traveling will be allowed again. So I see this for, yeah, I'd say fall, that the domestic traveling will come back again. But right now our government says, or even like local day trips you should not do them. So we have a long way to go there.
Yeah, I know in San Francisco, we took a drive on the weekend, and they have signs that say, if you live 5 miles away from here, turn around. So that's pretty serious. And Diane, do you have anything to add on this subject?
Not at the moment.
I think Katerina kind of covered the European perspective very well. Let's move on. And I know Richie mentioned the mask initiative that NYU is embarked on. It's a very worthwhile, very worthwhile endeavor, kind of on the charity end. Victoria, I know you're involved with something in New York's Chinatown to help that community. Maybe you can share what that is.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Jennifer Tam, she's a director of communication at Foursquare. We started an initiative to help to support New York City's Chinatown. So with the coronavirus, there's been a lot of impact within the hospitality and the dining industry since the in-restaurant dining ban has happened. But a lot of the Chinatowns have been suffering since far back as January, when coronavirus started making the news cycle. And there's really xenophobia, just misspread of information that has caused these businesses to lose anywhere from 50 to 80% of their revenue from 2020. And Jen and I have a real fear that a lot of the Chinatowns in New York City, which Manhattan's Chinatown's historic, it's a very vibrant neighborhood known for its culture, and there's a concern it's not going to survive. So we've taken our skill set, our expertise, especially Jen in communications, myself being in the meetings and events industry, to help to mobilize and get these businesses and offer them support to generate cash flow. So one initiative which has worked really well is that we're accepting donations, and all of the money goes towards purchasing meals for essential workers. They've been primarily hospital workers who've requested these meals because they can't go out for lunch. So they're working 12, 14-hour shifts, and then we take the donations, purchase these meals for them from Chinatown restaurants, and they are able to generate bulk catering orders. So one day we're giving them business that they may not have seen for an entire week. So it's a great initiative that we're launching. So I encourage you to check it out at welcometochinatown.com. And then second phase is we're helping to build a positive narrative for Chinatown, so that when Chinatown opens for business, we are going to help to drive tourism back here.
Great, thank you, Victoria. And I have to mention too that we just wrote a story of sort of addressing that. Joan Eisenstadt, our blogger, and out on the West Coast where I'm based, of course, in China. In San Francisco, we have probably the largest Chinatown outside of China in the world, and of course in Seattle too. So we have a frequent contributor, John Chen, who is very active, especially in the Seattle area, Asia Pacific Islander community. So head on over to meetingstoday.com. You can find that story, and exactly what Victoria said. There's a lot of challenges in that community. So tune into that and pitch in and help if you can. So thank you, Victoria. Let's address some questions from our audience here. And real quick, I mean, the $1 million question is, and maybe we can't even answer this, is, when is the new normal going to end, and when are we going to get back to the way things were, or will we ever? Anyone have the crystal ball out for that?
Basically, again, based on what I read and what we are discussing, I think we're going to see the new normal. So the normal that we know, the times that we know, it's not going to come back. So we're going to have to, and one of the things that we tell all of our students, agility is a new skills that everybody has to develop. And then this time, these difficult times are really helping us to develop that transferable skills, regardless your industry. And especially in hospitality. So, I mean, there are scientists says the new normal will come back, not the old normal that we know, when the vaccine actually found out. So this is really right now, and especially a lot of the scientists are talking about antibody testing. And I know Italy was actually working on it. So I just read a study from MIT that they're talking about immunity passports. So that what can you actually add the passport? So then that's going to open up the doors of privacies. But then certain countries can look at your passports. If you're immune to certain diseases, then they would actually come in. So those are all going to be part of the new normal. So we shouldn't even expect the old normal, really. And I think people are gonna get used to that social distancing, and how is that gonna impact the teaching or universities, as well as the meetings that we're gonna learn, and we're gonna see, well, that's not that bad after all. So, and again, I don't think that normalcy that we know it's going to come back, but we're going to see new normals. We're going to learn, just like we learn certain things from 9/11, Ebola, and other crises.
Great, thank you, Richie. And we had a question come in for Michael. How are hotels approaching their force majeure clauses as it relates to moving ahead? And how about attrition, cancellation? Are people relaxing these contract terms at all?
In regards to the rebooking, obviously, every hotel that I've dealt with so far, as well as many of my planner friends in the industry, have shown very, very good movement from the hotels. They obviously want to keep the relationship. They know it's going to be a tough time for them as well as our clients. So there's a lot of flexibility currently on the renegotiations, the movement, and so forth. Regards to attrition, that's really still case by case right now. I don't think there's been a leader on any front, a hotel chain or corporation that said, hey, we're going to do, just a wait and see approach and, hope that the numbers come in as best they can. So, you are seeing a little flexibility in regards to deposit schedules, cancellation fees, some attrition, but it's not a free-for-all at this point in time. It's really, let's take it case by case. Let's give it a shot. Let's hope. But the biggest challenge that you have right now is a lot of individuals have relocated their meetings to 2021. But with new business, everyone's just searching. No one's really committing until we find out exactly what's going on with the opening of the country, if there's some antibody tests and other stipulations. So, there's a lot of looky-loos right now. So the hotels really aren't putting a tremendous amount of attention to it, at least that I've spoken to. But there is some flexibility from case to case, but just not, hey, if you're booking 300 rooms, we'll take whatever lands in our building.
Great, thank you, Michael. Let's move on to the incentive segment. We haven't addressed that yet. Diane, what are you seeing there? And also, how do you feel about people can collaborate and sort of solve the problems involved with international travel, especially in relation to incentives?
Right. Okay, thank you, Tyler. I'd also just like to hark back briefly to what Michael was saying about attrition and flexibility and so on and so forth. I think those are very, very important aspects that will impact the quality of our relationships between properties and DMCs and meeting planners. I think what is really necessary as we move forward is a high level of flexibility. And with regard to the incentive sector, typically incentives are revolving around some type of reward for high performers. And I think given the level of uncertainty at the moment, it would be just a logical conclusion to think, well, maybe that's not the reward that I would like to receive right now, to have to travel to another country and perhaps put my health at risk. So this will also take its time to return. And it's really contingent upon our global community coming up with really worthwhile solutions to this problem. What you were talking about, Richie, also earlier, that, and again, if we can transform from George Jetson imagining a video conference to having a video conference 20 some odd, maybe it's 30 now, years later, we can certainly move forward with confidence, knowing that the greatest minds in the world will be focusing their attention on how can we still function and move freely as human beings around this planet, hopefully in a more sustainable way, but we will find ways to continue to have that face-to-face meeting, which is so essential for creativity, as we were talking about before. And that will, the great minds will collaborate and come up with solutions for this so that we can continue to interact and find solutions.
Great, thank you. And speaking of great minds, does anyone else have anything to add on this subject of incentives?
I think I agree with Diane in a way that maybe incentives are going to actually come back, but locations are going to change. We used to cover, before this pandemic, one of our biggest discussion was over tourism, right? Part of the over tourism, because most of the incentives that they were going Venice, Barcelona, and those kind of locations. So maybe
we should have that problem now, right? Yeah.
Well, right now it's our biggest problem is under tourism, obviously. So that's a new concept where we're doing a lot of research on how we can actually turn under tourism to over tourism. So that's the shift as well. So that maybe incentives, locations will change when it comes. So people are going to be looking at more open air, more space. And so that might be an interesting, some remote locations rather than places like Venice and Barcelona and everything. So that once the fear is gone in consumers' mind, and I think creativity is kick in, and I think that's where the meeting planners come in, how creative you can be to address all the fear and all the issues when you're planning your next meeting.
And I know covering the incentive segment and dealing with folks like the Society for Incentive Travel Excellence, there's a whole new demographic coming up that really wants to give back when they go on these rewards programs. And I'm just thinking, you know, maybe another silver lining of this whole crisis is people will be more attuned to that. You know, and Richie, you deal with a lot of young people coming in to the industry. Do you think my statement is accurate on that?
Totally. I mean, one of the favorite subjects of my students, they're all millennial, both grad and undergrad level, sustainability and giving and sharing, really, because they are really from global warming to helping homeless, helping the environment. Whenever we do policy classes or destination marketing classes, this comes up. And I think you're right, the new generations, as much as people are comparing baby boomers versus the millennials, they are far more mindful when it comes to what you just said. And I totally can attest what you just said. And they're gonna make this happen. So that giving to society, giving to environment, that will be part of our industry, no matter which industry we are in.
Great, thank you. And we're sort of approaching the end of the program, so I'll maybe take the opportunity to ask some more questions that came in from the audience. This is one that's interesting. How do you foresee the design of meetings changing, and such as the setups to guarantee physical distancing, or is that something that will just sort of happen and as we come out of this, and do you think people will go back to crowding together again? Who has a good opinion on that?
So I'll take this one actually, Tyler. Thank you. We had like a direct impact of all of this because we had our largest conference happen in March, and we were the last conference in San Diego before the governor called the ban on over 250 people of large gatherings. So leading up to the event, we had heard of this virus happening, and we were wondering if it's something to worry about, and we kind of kept it in the back of our minds. But then a month out, there was the ban on China, and we do have a large contingency that comes from China. So we made accommodations for that, and then about 2 weeks out from the conference, everything just tanked. Everyone, there's the whole fear factor. Should we travel? Social distancing came into effect. Even touching things, like all of these things were things that we had to consider and make changes on. And it was quick and it was immediate. And some of the things that we did to try to alleviate some of the fear and to assure people that we were, taking into account health and safety. We spread out the rooms. If anyone's been at the San Diego Convention Center, some of those rooms are really, really big. So we definitely we spread out some of the seating so they weren't so close together. We added more aisles. We added different types of seating. For the breaks, we made sure that we had all kinds of wipes, sanitizers. There was no passing of hors d'oeuvres. We had servers passing everything in terms of like buffet kind of style meals. So there was nothing touching. Everything, any kind of baked goods, we had bakery sheets so that no one was touching anything. And if there was going to be an opportunity or a chance that someone might, share the same set of tongs or something, we made sure that we had gloves, sanitizers, wipes, all those things. So I think moving forward, I think these are things that we're definitely going to have to consider, especially, just coming out of this and when meetings start coming back, going into the design, we are going to have to think about, do we add more aisles? Do we add more space in between seats? We definitely have to think, I know some fire marshals have some issues with how much spacing you have between seats, but you're going to need to get a little creative and see what you can do.
Well, thank you, Jessica. Let's move over to Katarina about the situation in Germany in regards to this. And I understand that the German Convention Bureau has a number of initiatives that they've embarked on in regards to the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. In Germany, we do have a great network of great people openly sharing their tactics, their strategies, their best practices in this whole situation. And me personally, I'd like to see this situation we are facing right now as a promoter for innovation, because topics like Richie mentioned, sustainability, resilience, digitization get to a whole new level. And yeah, I guess Lumi can share the details on the initiative the GCB is taking right now.
Yeah, at this point, we can only stay informed and inform forward. That's kind of the main strategy. The German Convention Bureau in Frankfurt created this really quick initiative, eventcrisis.org, which it's a platform that provides event planners, service providers, destinations with information regarding the planning of business events in any crisis. So unfortunately, it took this crisis to get the engines going and drop everything and do it. But it's a really useful site that has it's been on since March, and it's being updated every day. We also have an international section to which we're adding interviews from US planners. We have Karina Bauer in an interview. So we try to stay updated as much as possible between our offices and together with the rest of the world. And we also have a little social media project, Meet Germany from Home. So it's a cute little video that we're sharing with just nice images of Germany that are nice to look at for now.
Great. Thank you, Lumi. And before we end the program, let's just throw it out around the panel. What do you think we've learned through all of this, this pandemic, in our response to it, how we're weathering it? I know, a couple of the things I think I've learned is that you should have a good crisis management communications system in place and risk management system. Let's kick it off with. Let's start with Diane. What have you learned through this whole disaster we're going through right now?
That's a very good question. Well, one thing that occurred to me recently, walking through the Congress Center at the Austral Berlin, before we had this slam of the coronavirus, I was observing some of the congresses that were taking place at the Austral. And actually there are three that really remained in my memory. One was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Grand Challenges. The other one was the International Society for Ultrasound and Obstetrics and Gynecology. And the third was the Internet Governance Forum. These three stuck in my mind because what occurred to me when I was observing these global congresses is these congresses are tackling problems, challenges that transcend national borders, national boundaries, whether it's who governs the internet, or with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation talking about migration of people, or water shortages, global climate change, what have you. And so with that in mind, I think one thing that is concerning to me, there are many things that are concerning to me about this pandemic, but pulling back from face-to-face interaction, not only because it impacts creativity and it impacts trust, but by enabling that global Congress, we bring together the greatest minds in the world that are not just sitting in one particular respective country, and we enable collaboration and enable coming up with solutions for these problems and challenges that affect all of us. And I think having hit the pause button for this pandemic, that's something we need to think about. How do we tackle these global issues, not only Corona, but climate change, migrations of people, and global governance? And I think that certainly happens through the face-to-face Global Congress, also happens in an online platform. I think we all are realizing we need more of that. So if that's one of the takeaway, we need more cooperation and collaboration nationally, internationally, and globally.
Great, thanks, Diane. Michael? Are you still there with us? What have you learned during this, and any thoughts to share? You might be on mute, so let's move to Victoria.
Yeah, I think the biggest learning for us is that what we thought we had as a great contingency plan, there's also an opportunity to refine and improve those contingency plans, and then to also make sure that they're agile, that they can go into effect, but also be shifted depending on the needs of what the business, what's going on, and also the focuses and priority of our management team.
Wonderful. Richie, what have you learned during this?
So we learn to be agile, right? The agility. And then one of the things that I always say that I guess we learn to know what you can control, what you cannot control, and only focus on the things that you have full control over, and don't worry about the things you can't control over. So once people realize what controls you have and what situations, and they can be very creative. So I think that's what I would say, that's what we learned. So know what you can control, what you cannot control.
Thank you, Richie. And Jessica, what's top of mind with you through all this?
Well, I think both Richie and Victoria really hit it on the nail on this. For one, a communications plan is, of course, vital. And leading into our event, we had that. We had a plan, and we were meeting every single day. And we started with Plan A, but by the time we got to the conference, we were probably on version plan, DEF, because every day it changed. My poor exhibits team, we started off with exhibits around 700, and I think they ended up just stopping, trying to redo the floor plan, because they would redo it, and the very next day we would have another 10, 20, 30 exhibitors drop. So I think definitely being agile and be able to, just think on your feet and just keep going, and also just remembering to take time to take care of yourself and your team. I mean, these are stressful times, and any kind of crisis situation, whether it's a pandemic or something else, things get stressful, and people deal with stress differently. And being on the leadership team, people look to you for guidance and for strength, and it's sometimes hard being at that point. So I think it's important just to remember to take a step back, take a breath, and get yourself collected and keep moving forward, because the show usually has to keep going. The show must go on. So, and people are looking to you to make it happen.
Thank you, Jessica. Those are very nice thoughts. And Katerina, what are you thinking? And then maybe kick it over to Lumi, and she can provide some final thoughts from the GCB before we end the program today.
Well, I think what we are also experiencing, that virtual communication is nice, but after having a couple of Zoom meetings a day, I really long for a real social interaction. And that is, I guess, the silver lining for our whole industry, that live communication, face-to-face meetings will never be over or replaced by something virtual. And that is what gives me hope going through this crisis.
Great. Lumi?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you, everyone. Yes, we are at the end, and the purpose of this really, I think, was achieved. We wanted a conversation between friends, sharing the same issues and challenges and changes, and I think we've achieved that. And thank you all very, very much. It's been We prepared for quite a while now, and we appreciate everyone's time. I think we would try to do more of these if the feedback is positive at the end. As we all know, everything is changing every day, and we would like to stay informed and again, inform everyone as much as we can. So thank you for the time. And thank you for inspiring. Thank you for the good things you're doing, because everybody's doing a little piece of everything that helps on a small level, on a higher level. Thank you for staying together and for sharing and for being genuine. And Tyler, would you like the last word?
Yeah, I'll bring it home. Thank you, Lumi. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is a kind of a new format we explored, and I think it was great, successful, and that's all due to the experts on our panel. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you for joining us. Head on over to meetingstoday.com. We have 1,000,002 other webinars and podcasts you can enjoy, and we've really tried our best to cover the whole COVID crisis. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists and everyone. Have a great rest of the day, no matter where you're at. If you're home, maybe go make yourself a snack or something. Not too much. I know I'm doing a little too much of that. But, you know, make it the best you can. And I hope to see all of you face to face soon.